What's up, everybody? I've got Frank Karsten here, and we're going to talk about the magic of Modern here. And you've done some crunching of some numbers for us, as you have all weekend, Frank. And this is some really cool stuff, because we're going to talk about the win rates of all the decks in Modern, right?
Yes, indeed. The Mythic Championship does reward performance in both draft and constructed, but I always find it very interesting to look at the Modern round specifically. So yeah, I ran the numbers, and let's just pull up the table with all the win rates, not let you wait any longer.
Oh yes, I bet people at home have been waiting to see these numbers here, Frank. So I'm looking at this right now, and it's pretty obvious. We've got HOGAAK right there, 98 players on the deck, win rate 56.2%. Talk about that.
Yeah, this was very high. Like in this entire table, you can see the win rates just in the Modern Swiss rounds, excluding mirror matches. And yeah, some decks didn't do so well, like White-Blue Control. Other decks did fairly well. Urza Thopter Sword, for example. But yeah, what mainly stands out is HOGAAK. It was the most played deck. People were ready for it, and still it reached a 56.2% match win rate in the Modern rounds.
So that's pretty high. Maybe
yes.
an understatement there. But we only have one in our top 8. Why is that?
Well, the answer is basically the combination of draft and variance. Even though the HOGAAK players as a group collectively had an above average win rate in draft, it just turned out that the players who had an excellent performance in draft, those HOGAAK players did poorly in constructed, and then the HOGAAK players who did really well in Modern just had poor draft. So that didn't really work out, except for Martin Muller, that is.
All right, well, there's another number here I want to pull everybody's attention to, and that is HOGAAK DREDGE on the right side of the table here, and that is 60.4%. What is going on here, Frank?
Well, to also combine this with the HOGAAK numbers, I would have to say that over half of the players who went 8-2 or better in Modern were playing either HOGAAK or HOGAAK DREDGE. So lots of HOGAAKs near the top performing Modern decks, even though it may not show it like that in the top 8. But HOGAAK DREDGE indeed performed even better than just
60%.
HOGAAK. Very impressive, and for me, HOGAAK DREDGE was the deck of the tournament, the deck that had just the best performance out of all major archetypes.
But only 7 players on that deck. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's pull up the HOGAAK DREDGE deck list, because you might be wondering at home, how is this different than normal HOGAAK?
Yes, so this is, or it may even be easier to just compare it to Dredge.
Oh, sure.
Because like the basic shell is a Dredge deck, except instead of several copies of Narcomoeba, it runs 3 copies of HOGAAK. Then also instead of Shriekhorn, you have some Stitcher Supplier to enable the HOGAAK. And also not to forget Dried Arbor, a fetchable way that can convoke HOGAAK from the graveyard. So if you compare this to like a normal HOGAAK deck, it doesn't have the explosiveness, it doesn't have Vengefine, but you are much better at racing with, say, Creeping Chill, also Conflagrate. This allows you to beat Ensnaring Bridge, which is quite important as well. All in all, a very strong package that worked well for. It was actually kind of a team deck. A group of players played it.
Right, we said only 7 people on this deck, so a team found this. They kind of broke the format even more than it was already.
Yeah, that might even be fair to say. It was ROSHEN, EAPEN, Ben Friedman, Marcus Leong, Andrei Strasky, Oliver Tew, Oliver Tomaiko, and Noah Walker, who all came to the tournament with this deck, and they got an excellent win rate.
So let's take a look. Actually, we are going to get a chance to see the sideboard from this HOGAAK DREDGE list. And is there anything that you kind of want to call out in the sideboard that's an important tool in Modern?
Well, the one card I have to pull out is Leyline of the Void. It was the most played card in the entire event, and an easy 4-off that was surely important for many of their match wins.
All right, so that's a look at HOGAAK DREDGE. Thank you for that, Frank. But we're going to take a look at some more cool deck lists from the tournament that we might not have gotten a chance to see on camera that had pretty good win rates in the Modern portion of the tournament. And the first one we're going to take a look at is Devoted NEOFORM from ATSUKI KIHARA. Okay, what's going on here?
So what you see is the infinite mana combo from Devoted Druid and Vizier of Remedies. That one has been around in Modern for quite a while. There's some new cards in here. Giver of Runes is a big one. It can protect your combo creatures, but also be sacrificed to NEOFORM or Eldritch Evolution to find the pieces. But if you just look at the main deck, it looks like a fairly normal list. A bit surprising to see Eldritch Evolution over Finale of Devastation. But the main surprises, they're going to be in the sideboard.
All right, let's take a look at the sideboard here. And oh boy, there's some unusual stuff in here. Allosaurus Rider. What's going on, Frank?
Yeah, this is just genius deck building, I have to say. So if KIHARA is playing against a deck where he expects maybe the opponent to board in lots of removal for his small creatures, he can put in Allosaurus Rider and Griselbrand, and then put Allosaurus Rider onto the battlefield, basically for free, sacrifice it via NEOFORM or Eldritch Evolution to find Griselbrand. There's not an immediate win in his deck that way, but you know, turn 2 Griselbrand is pretty powerful after sideboard.
Do you want to turn 2 Griselbrand or do you want to turn 2 HOGAAK?
Well, I'll go for the Griselbrand, actually.
Yeah, me too, me too. All right, so there's a look at Devoted NEOFORM, a really cool deck there with an exceptional sideboard. Now here's another deck, MARDU PYROMANCERS. And Frank, this one is a deck that might have undergone the smallest name change in the tournament. All we did was add an S on the end of Pyromancer because now we've got 2.
Indeed, it used to be just Young Pyromancer. Now we have Seasoned Pyromancer as well from Modern Horizons. It's an excellent fit for the deck, especially when you can discard cards like Lingering Souls for value, also Smiting Helix. But it is kind of an update of an existing archetype, but with plenty of sweet new cards that made it more powerful.
Speaking of sweet new cards, tell me about this Lightning Skelemental. I'm into it.
Oh yeah, that is actually a very powerful card, kind of a combination of a Ball Lightning and a Mind Rot all in one. In this deck in particular, you can also get it back from the graveyard for the low cost of 1 mana with Unearth. There was even Thunderkin Awakener to return it. So lots of sweet new synergies that are possible. And all in all, it rewarded KENSUKE KATO with a 6-4 record. Definitely a version of the deck to keep an eye on.
I really like that. Unearthing Lightning Skelemental. Okay, you have my interest. Up next, a deck that a lot of people were going to ask themselves, is this real? Well, turns out it just might be. Let's take a look at Goblins. Okay, Frank, is this deck really doing it?
It seemed like it. There were 2 Goblin players here at the Mythic Championship. Nicholas went 6-4. The other Goblin player, Jim Davis, with a relatively similar list. He had some Skirk Prospectors instead of Thoughtseize. He went 5-5. So both are, you know, reasonable records, showing that maybe Goblins is not immediately like completely broken, but it is a competitive, viable, legitimate deck in Modern, and that's really exciting. These reprints of Goblin Matron and Goblin Ringleader have really pulled back the good old tribe that people will remember from way back, and that is now also available in Modern.
Yeah, I played this a little bit online before this tournament. It's a really fun deck with a bunch of different lines of play, so if you're looking for something that kind of gives you a lot of choices, but it's still kind of fun because it's a tribal deck, Goblins might just be for you. All right, so those decks ended up doing pretty well in the tournament. A couple didn't have, you know, as good of win records, but they are interesting enough that we're going to bring them up now, and maybe people can iterate on them and take a look further. The first one up here, I love the name, Unexpected EMRAKUL. Yeah. No one ever expects EMRAKUL.
This is quite something. So this is basically a Titan Breach deck, which is eventually going to find Valakut and ping the opponent with mountains. But then there is Unexpected Results, which is a 4-mana card that says, well, shuffle your library and then reveal the top card. If it is a land, well, you just put it onto the battlefield and return Unexpected Results to your hand. But mainly if it is a non-land card, you get to cast it for free.
Yeah, so let's do it.
You need to be a bit lucky, but if you shuffle and find EMRAKUL on top, oh boy, you're getting there.
Unexpected indeed. Well, let's take a look at another one here. White Blue Quest. Okay, tell me what's going on here, Frank.
Yeah, this is another deck that may not have gotten the best Modern record, but still looked extremely sweet, so I wanted to highlight it. This deck is built around Quest for the Holy Relic, which is a 1-mana enchantment that says, well, when you cast a creature, put a counter on it. So maybe on turn 1 you go Quest, Memnite, Ornithopter. Turn 2, you cast Glinthawk, third counter on the Quest, return Ornithopter, replay it. Maybe then convoke out Martyr's Soul, which is a card I wasn't really expecting this
hello.
weekend.
I don't even play that in draft.
But then you have 5 counters on the quest, and you can sacrifice it to get Argentum armor and immediately equip it to a creature.
What is Argentum armor? You're going to have to help me out here.
So that gives +6/+6, but most importantly, it gives the creature the ability that when it attacks, you get to destroy target permanent. And getting to do that as early as turn 2, that is a nice path to victory.
All right, well, we found a couple of really cool things to happen on turn 2 with some of these decks, Frank.
Modern is still filled with lots of spicy options. The format is still, I mean, HOGAAK is dominating, but there's still a bunch of diversity and variety around. A lot of things are possible in this format, and I love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Frank Karsten, with a look at the magic of Modern.